Hi, this is Rebekah.
And Leslie.
With the Geeky Girls Night In podcast. Geeky Girls Night In is a podcast with your fandom family sleepover style.
Empowering fans and creating inclusive fan spaces where we can all be ourselves.
So get your jammies.
Grab a drink.
Gather the fur babies.
And join the conversation.
Thanks so much for joining us this week. We have a really special episode for you today. Leslie is back.
I am back from the South.
Yes.
And I am talking about Laura Ingalls Wilder, some Sims nonsense, and Gen Con, which happens in Indianapolis. I also want to give a shout out to my husband. Happy birthday, baby.
I'm talking about the Keep Families Together March and which of your favorites were there. And we have a wonderful interview with the absolutely delightful Bryn Donovan, who's a wonderful author. She does paranormal romance, and she also does books, sort of supporting other writers.
Yep.
And we have a big announcement to make.
Hooray!
Drum roll.
So we have a podcast, in case you didn't know. And with that comes some expenses. Mm-hmm. And with the expenses comes our credit cards.
Right.
And we were hoping that maybe, you, our lovely listener, would be so kind as to help us out and maybe head over to our Patreon and take a look.
Yeah. So, So if you're a listener and you're enjoying it and you think you might want to support, we're going to post that in the comments in the show notes. And there's a couple levels of support for as much as a coffee a month. You can support the podcast, and there's different levels with a lot of fun names like Time Travelers and Heirs and Hunters and, all of our favorite shows. So go check it out. And enjoy the show.
Bye.
So thanks for joining us this week. We're so happy to be back.
Hello, hello.
Leslie is back, which is awesome.
Yes.
She was out having a good time last week. So how was the wedding? You were out because of a wedding, right?
Right. So first of all, congratulations to Nicole and Chris. They've been together for about 11 years and just went ahead and decided to tie the knot in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, it was gorgeous. Me and my husband stayed in Greenville, South Carolina, which is about an hour outside of Asheville. And we're walking around this absolutely charming town, looking at each other like, well, I'm pretty sure my job has chains down here. And you could possibly work, telecommute. And we could just stay here because this is great. Of course, this was all being said while I was eating Nutella marshmallow ice cream.
Yeah.
So that may have had a little bit to do with why I wanted to stay. It was beautiful, though.
I grew up there. Did you know that?
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I was born about an hour away in Columbia.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the small towns outside of Greenville, so like Liberty, easily around there. So.
Oh, it was just beautiful. It was, and like I live in the burbs in Indiana, and like I can count on probably one hand the amount of Black families in my neighborhood.
Yeah. And
it's me and this dude that we have dubbed the Black Republican.
Oh no.
We don't know if he's a Black Republican or not, but you know that sketch from Key and Peele?
Yes. We are not a monolith.
Like, we're not a monolith.
Yes, we're not a monolith.
He looks like them.
Yes.
He looks like them.
They got like the pager on their belts and
Yes, that is him. And he has a dog that looks kind of like Spuds MacKenzie from the 80s. So like he's just been dubbed the Black Republican. Okay. So it's me and it's him. And like when I saw, like I kind of ignored him until I saw Spuds MacKenzie, and then I started waving at him. And now he's really confused. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point of that is to say that there were Black people everywhere, and it was amazing. Plus, the hotel that we were staying in, there was a family reunion going on. So anytime I went downstairs, are you part of the reunion? No, I'm sorry.
You're like, I don't know, you got a plate for me? I might be.
Right. But like the hotel, they have an amazing breakfast. It's the Hilton Suites. They're absolutely adorable hotels. My husband likes them because if the apocalypse happens, they're like the perfect setup to defend from. So like there's a central lobby, and then there's like apartments almost all the way up. So he's like, we should go to one if the zombie apocalypse happens. So we're set. And I'm like, I'm with you on this. But we were sitting at breakfast one day, and like I had gotten, like, the way that we do it is I get my food and I get Evelyn's food, Geeky Baby's food, and then my husband goes and gets his. And so me and Geeky Baby are sitting there and we're minding our own business, eating our food, and this man kind of sidles over and he's like, hey, are you part of the reunion? And I was like, no, no, I don't know these people, but thank you. And then he comes and he sits by us. And he starts asking questions, and he's like, oh, I just want to sit here and watch the game. And we were by a TV. I didn't realize that. And then my husband comes and he like looks at this man kind of funny, and he sits down beside him because that's where we are. And I was like, well, since you're back, I'm going to go get some sausage. And so I got up and left, got some sausage, come back. Dude is gone. And I was like, hey, what happened to the dude that was watching the game? And he just looked at me. He's like, he wasn't watching the game. He was hitting on you. And I was like, are you sure? He's like, as soon as you got up and left, he got up and left.
That's funny. Like,
he didn't say 2 words to me. And I'm like,
Shut up.
I guess it's a good thing his first question was, am I part of the family reunion?
Yeah, make sure make sure you're not related to him.
Right. So that was interesting. And the fact that, I moved to Indiana when I was about 7 or 8. And like my self-esteem took a major hit because there was nobody here that looked like me. Or there was a smattering, and there was like a completely different like beauty aesthetic than what I was used to. Like I went down south and I'm fine. Like I'm cute. Like I'm considered cute. And like that kind of threw me for a loop because I forgot what that was like. So like it had me kind of looking at myself differently. I'm like, yeah, I am kind of cute. Yeah, okay. And my husband's always like, I'm trying to tell you and you don't want to listen to anybody. And I'm like, yeah, let's just move. Let's just go.
Seriously.
Yeah, so it was good. Congratulations again to Chris and Nicole.
Nice. Well, we're glad you're back.
Thank you.
And do you want to kick off our Weekend Geek? You have anything for us this week?
I've got several things. So a bunch of you aren't going to understand this, but
there will be some who will, inevitably.
Yeah, there'll be some that will, because this was on my personal Facebook page several months ago. Okay. So I'm going to start, I have to start the story at the beginning. Okay. So 2 years ago, my 9-to-5 job held a garage sale. It was outdoors, like people brought in stuff that they didn't need anymore, didn't want anymore. They held a garage sale. The money went towards like helping families within the company. So like if like you had a fire at your house and you needed extra money, you could apply to this particular grant money that we had. And we were raising money for that. Okay. And so like I went out there and there was a book. It was Almanzo Wilder's story, Laura Ingalls Wilder's husband. It was his story growing up as a little boy. Now, I've always wanted to read the Little House on the Prairie books. A couple of problems there. I'm a book hoarder, and I'm trying to do better and be better. And one of those things was that I typically don't bring physical copies of books into the house anymore. Okay. I made an exception when Anthony Bourdain died. I bought one of his books because, it's Anthony Bourdain. Right. But, with a series like that, that's like 12 books, I don't have the space.
You're trying to cut back, basically.
Right. So, and I have an e-reader. So I can get 90% of things on e-reader. Little House on the Prairie wasn't one of those things for a long time that wasn't on e-reader. That was really? Not, it was not on e-reader. But I saw this book, it was 50 cents. So I was like, I'll pick it up. So I picked it up, I went home, and it's a fast read. It's like for 5th graders. So like I read it in a couple of hours, and basically Almanzo's story is food porn.
Okay.
It's straight food porn, and I meant to bring the book with me so I could read you guys one of the passages, but like all he does the entire book is eat.
Okay.
He eats and he farms.
Okay.
Amazing book. Love it. So this made me want to read the Laura Ingalls Wilder stories more and more and more. Finally, they're on ebook. And so, oh, and another thing is I try not to buy a whole lot of books anymore, even on e-reader. I try and get them from the library. Support your public library.
What?
So, yes. So I borrowed them from the library. The Little House on the Prairie, number 1, is not food porn.
No, it is
At all.
No.
It's crazy.
I haven't read it since I was a very little girl. So
Never.
I honestly, I don't have a good memory. Books tend to go in one ear and out the other. Wait, that made no sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah, I read it. I haven't read them in years. I remember just snippets of stuff.
So let me refresh your memory. Ma's a racist.
Okay.
Pa can't do any wrong. Carrie is a uppity brat, and I'm pretty sure Laura is just like buck wild. So
I feel like there was skin bleaching or something involved in that story. I remember like weird beauty stuff from back then.
no skin bleaching, and I think you might be thinking of Anne of Green Gables because they talk about like putting lemon juice on their hands and stuff and putting in kids' gloves. But like Ma's a racist. Anytime that there's Indians, Native Americans around, anything like that, Ma freaks out.
Okay.
She's like, don't talk about the Indians. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
At one point in the book, Pa is in a minstrel show. Okay. So he's in blackface.
Okay.
The books are shit shows.
Right.
Once Laura grows up, she goes to teach several miles away, and then back in those days, you would rent, or well, you wouldn't rent, but the school board would have you reside in a house of one of the students or something, or somebody of the community.
Okay.
And they put her in a house where like the people were fighting, and at one point the woman comes at the man with a knife.
Oh Lord, have mercy.
And like she couldn't say anything to her parents because they're trying to raise money to get Carrie to go to the blind college, but her mother always knows when she's lying. Like that's one of the things that she says several times. I know when you're lying, don't try to lie to me. And so her mom blatantly ignored her lying in this, just blatantly ignored her. They also don't tell you that I think she's like 10, 12 years younger than Almanzo. Okay. Her daughter Rose rewrote these books, rejiggered them so that it wasn't as creepy. Really? Okay. Yeah. There's like so many things. So, but the main thing is the whole racism situation. Right. And there's a point to this story. This past week, Laura Ingalls Wilder's name was stripped from an award because the Little House book depictions of Native Americans is racist. Like it's a mess. Yeah. So,
which award? Like a book award? Yeah,
it's a book award. I'm trying to find the name of it.
Well, it's not the Laura Ingalls Wilder Award anymore.
Not anymore.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, I guess she was on the brink of having the award named in her honor. Okay. And they snatched it away. Okay. Like one of the examples in the article states that, like, there were no people, only Indians lived there. That's an actual quote from the book.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it's an absolute mess. And Laura Ingalls Wilder fans are, some of them, I'm not gonna say all of them, are pissed because they're like, you're erasing history, but nobody's erasing anything. No. Nobody's erasing anything at all. Nobody's erasing anything about these books. It's just that
choosing not to name an award after her, that's not, it's not oppression.
Right. Not even a little bit. So, the Association for Library Services to Children voted to strip Wilder's name from the award. Yeah. So,
well,
yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe they'll find a better author to put their name on there. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's amazing how long these things last. Like, to have such a, I mean, America, still there's a lot of white supremacy, but especially then, like, no one else had access to publishing, no one else had access to education, no one else had any kind of access. So it's like, well, we can just keep honoring people who were, you know, racist / genocidal / it's amazing to me how long these things last and how close they get to begin with.
Also, This Week in Geek, I don't have a whole lot of Sims nonsense going on, but Seasons is out. I have not purchased it yet, but because Seasons is out, Sims did an update to stuff, like their gardening things, and I'm here to tell you it's a big thumbs up. I love them.
Nice.
I don't have to go to each individual plant and click on it and weed each individual plant. I just click on one, it weeds everything, stuff like that. I also finally discovered how to make a vet clinic because I have the pets expansion pack. So now I own a vet clinic.
Nice.
Yes. So like 2 of my Sims are working 2 jobs. They work their day job and then they go over and they work in the vet clinic. So
that's so cool. You know, now that, you know, just hearing you talk about The Sims is the closest I've come to The Sims, but so now when I see it everywhere and I'm like, Leslie, I like texted you a link to Sailor J, who's really funny on Twitter. And she was like,
this funny period.
She's hilarious, but she's like, these pregnancies are so fast or something like that. I was cracking up. I was like, oh my God, you and Leslie need to talk.
They're 3 days long. Sims for pregnancies, I think, are 3 days long.
I wish real ones were. Anyway.
Very. And then the final thing that I have to talk about, Gen Con. Gen Con is here in Indianapolis, August 2nd through the 5th. I will be there. I will be wandering around aimlessly because I don't know what I'm doing. Please, if you see me, I will have on a shirt probably with our logo on it.
Yay.
Make sure you stop, say hi. I will have stickers. I will have hugs. I will take pictures. So make sure you stop me and say hi. And also that weekend, Hello from the Magic Tavern is doing a show, and I will be at I think they're doing a Friday show, either a Thursday, Friday, or a Friday, Saturday. I will be at the Friday show. So cool. I spoke with Usidore on Twitter, and apparently he's going to be walking around Gen Con. Hey, boo, hey.
That's so awesome.
Usidore's so fun. He's so fun.
And I don't know anything about I'll have to go look.
Usidore's fine. He's a wizard. He does this thing. I have to find the clip for you. It's when they do advertising for their show, one of the people that advertise with them is Blue Apron. So he does something called a chef's cadence, where he will talk about the ingredients in one of those boxes in this like deep, sexy Barry White voice.
You know, you don't realize how sexy someone's voice is until you hear him on a podcast sometimes.
And it's absolutely ridiculous. And plus, he's got the prettiest eyeballs I've ever seen. So,
you know who? So I started. Do you listen to the LeVar Burton Reads podcast?
I haven't yet. No.
It's amazing. First of all, I mean, he has the best choices of books. And he has such a lovely just personality. It's just great spending time with him and listening to the podcast. And then also, I did not realize how sexy his voice is until I started listening to his podcast. I was like, excuse me?
What? It messes with your mind.
I swear to Jesus Christ, I had a LeVar Burton sex dream from listening to his podcast. But you know what? No shame here. I'm just honest. I'm just going to be honest. Anyway.
I'm more of a data girl myself, so.
I know, but I'm telling you, listen to this podcast. You might add to your repertoire there.
Will do.
And speaking of cons in Indianapolis, I hope I get to go to one there. Supernatural is having a couple of special cons. I think they're called Making a Difference. I was trying to look it up and I can't find it fast enough. But, you know, Creation Entertainment does the Supernatural cons, and they're having 2 this season because they have multiple cons in the season, and they're having a few that are called they're like, what is it, making a difference. One is in one is in Cleveland and one is in Indianapolis.
The Giving Back Tour?
Giving Back Tour. Thank you. I like trying to talk and Google with one hand because my memory is awful. But so the boys aren't there. So J2 I don't see them on the list of people going. But 1, it's a lot cheaper, and 2, they're like kind of shaking the format up to where there's a ton more like audience participation. So, you know, Misha's kind of the leader of it because he tends to be the ringleader of all kinds of shit. And every single panel has like either, you know, whether it's a game or a dance or, you know, like.
They have a flash mob.
Yes. And so, and then of course it's raising money for various causes and things like that, which that's what Misha's always doing. So I would love to go because I haven't gone to a Supernatural. I've been to 5 Supernatural cons. I haven't gone in a couple years, mostly because the cost. But it's actually a lot more reasonable. This one is, and of course I love the boys, but you know, I have been to 5 cons and met them there. So anyway, I hope to do that because, like we've told people before, Leslie and I have actually never met IRL, and so it would be a lot of fun to do a live show.
Oh, I'm cracking up because I'm looking at this and it has, you know, the name of the person, who they play, et cetera, et cetera. Rob Benedict, God and lead singer, songwriter of house band Loud and Swain.
Yes. Well, Rob, first of all, is one of the most darling human beings. Like, you just want to, he's so sweet. You just want to put him in your coffee. Like, he's so darling. And he's so gorgeous. And I've been to his band's concerts because he has a really good indie band that plays in LA a lot. I mean, they tour, but they play in LA. And so we're really lucky. We have so much, just an embarrassment of talent in our fandom. So, you know, Richard Spate MCs, and then he brings his band, and they do a concert for us, and then they also play people on and off stage. It kind of makes the like environment really, really festive, you know?
Right.
So, anyway, so hopefully that happens. That would be really nice. I just have to, you know how it is, check the bank account. But so for my Weekend Geek, so yesterday, June 30th, was a national Keep Families Together rally. There were rallies all over the world, mostly in the United States, but there were in Germany, there were in Canada. Well, like anywhere there's an embassy, people protest in the embassy. So, you know, if people haven't been watching the news, it's mostly, you know, people who have been seeking asylum, which is their protected human right to do. They're being incarcerated and they're being separated from their children, and the children are being kept in cages. And it's just been horrific because a lot of things have leaked, like audio and pictures of the kids crying, you know, and basically just people were horrified. So yesterday was a lot of rallies. I live in the Inland Empire, so personally I rallied in front of the Victorville prison because we have, unfortunately, a lot of prisons out here. And the word got to us that ICE is transferring people to our prison. People, they're not doing anything wrong. This is their human right. Like, why are they being put in a prison? Yeah, so I was out there. It was like triple degree heat, but a lot of people showed up. We probably had close to 300 people, which is a very big deal. Wow. Because people are very intimidated to go in front of a prison for very good reasons to protest. But it went really, really well. And, you know, I posted a lot of pictures on my Facebook, but I can put some on our Instagram too. But, you know, I really like to show up, especially when it's outside the detention centers or the prisons, because I think we cage more human beings than any other country on the planet, proportionally speaking, and most of them are people of color. So I feel like mass incarceration is a big problem, and not everybody feels okay going in front of a prison. And since I feel like I have a lot of privilege in that way, I like to show up there. So there were actually, you know, and also, I mean, I mentioned this a little bit in passing, but, you know, over a decade ago, I went through a family separation. I was separated from my son when he was a baby, and I still have PTSD from it that can get triggered by this stuff. And certainly the audio of the children crying did that. And so, you know, I've been struggling a lot just emotionally, and for me, getting out there and protesting with other people who give a crap is something that is very strengthening, and it really helps me. And it was also, of course, very encouraging to see people who we support, you know, actors, writers, producers, people who make stories that we love, that we go, you know, put our heart and money towards. Their, you know, they are out there as well. So I'm just going to run through just a few. One, Felicia Day, who of course I love. She is darling. Long live Charlie Bradbury. She did a 12-hour Twitch fundraiser.
I saw that. And
yeah.
Did you see her brother? Are they twins?
I didn't see it. I was literally out all day at the protest, so I didn't actually get to watch it. I was kind of going over her feed, but, you know, she's being herself, just a darling human being. And they're dancing, and I haven't seen her. I didn't see I know you sent it to me. I haven't actually gotten the link to open yet, but she raised $212,368 for Raíces, Texas. So good for her. And also to see the Supernatural family kick in. Of course, Misha did a video to support her. Sam Smith was there. Just a lot of the Supernatural family came out, and that makes you feel good about supporting the people you support, you know. Looks like Ruthie Connell was there. And then Chrissy Teigen spoke at the LA rally, which was massive. And she spoke while she was holding her baby, which was very sweet and was very powerful. And she mentioned that she is incredibly proud to be a daughter of an immigrant because she has Thai heritage. And then, of course, we know Misha's been very active, and he actually did a video this week as well talking about Gishwiz. So for those who don't know, Gishwiz is an international scavenger hunt that Misha started, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And, you know, you split into teams, and then you get like 250 items to do, and you do as many as you can in a week. And it's just basically a lot of fun. It gets you out of your comfort zone, and you make art, and you bond, and you do good. And he did a video basically saying, hey, with all the things that are going on, it feels weird just to, you know, promote this in a silly way, because, you know, reminding people Gishwiz is about making a positive difference, and that it's going to be used this year very much as a tool for good. So, I mean, there's always multiple items for service every year, but I think he's really going to amp that up this year. So that makes me happy. I'm already registered. They're calling it Gish now, and it's an app. So download the Gish app. I'm telling you, it's a very special. You get to be like Misha for a week, just doing whatever the hell, like being a free spirit, creating that kind of thing. And then Lin-Manuel Miranda, he was at the DC March, and he spoke, and I mean, he's amazing. He said, if you're silent on this issue, or you're somehow for that issue, you're not getting reelected, and that's what we need to make them understand. Yeah. So he said, we will not stand for a country separating children from their families. So, I mean, of course this country's always separated families, especially people of color. And that's why it feels a little bit odd for immigrant organizers, because we're not used to having this much support. And hopefully we'll be able to, when people get out, we can educate them and they stay in the movement, you know. And definitely at the rally I went to, which was the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, almost all the speakers, you know, talked about, hey, let's not forget anybody who's caged. You know, let's not forget about mass incarceration. Let's not have this just be today and just be for children. Let's have it be for everybody, because there's a lot of intersections, you know, with Black Lives Matter and a lot of other, you know, issues in our country. So That's what I hope comes out of this. So yeah, it was very nice seeing our people out there. And then let's see, I was also going to talk quickly about, so it's the end of Pride Month. Yesterday was the last day of Pride Month, and Tessa Thompson came out. So she just very simply said, I'm attracted to men and also women. And she was speaking to Net Porter. I don't know how to say it. It's like a French thing. But of course, all the talk after that was okay. So, or her and Janelle Monáe a couple, because they just did that. Janelle Monáe's video where they're very sexy together, and of course they've you've seen them out at events and having a close relationship for many years. So, lots of people ship the shit out of them, and I know you do, Leslie. So.
Yes.
Tessa did not, people were like, she came out, and then Janelle just came out, so it's like, okay, is that next?
I heard that it was confirmed.
No, she did not confirm it. She just said we love each other, but she did not say it. You know what I mean? So
gotcha.
Basically, I don't know, we just have to, celebrate that she came out, and that's really awesome, and just want them to be happy whether they're together or not, but P.S. they're really cute together. So that was kind of a cool close to Pride Month, though. Every month should be Pride Month, as far as I'm concerned.
There you go.
Quickly, Terry Crews.
Bless his heart.
In a real sense, bless his heart. He was on...
Oh, and fuck 50 Cent.
Yes. Fuck 50 Cent. So, Terry Crews, for those who don't know, he was on Capitol Hill this week. He was testifying in favor of a bill that helps sexual assault victims. It basically creates additional civil rights protections for sexual assault survivors. It's being spearheaded by Amanda Nguyen. She, authored this bill, and he was there in support because Terry Crews is a freaking hero, and he, him speaking up on sexual abuse is a big movement, of positive, healthy masculinity as opposed to toxic masculinity. And he gets so much crap for it, and I just wanted to say, we love you, Terry.
Yes, very much so.
And keep doing what you're doing, and we need men like him, And so I don't want that to get kind of lost in the other activism going on this week. So we've got a really exciting interview next with Bryn Donovan, who is a wonderful author. I think you guys are going to all fall in love with. And so, stay tuned for that. So as promised, we are here with the wonderful Bryn Donovan. We are so excited to have you on the podcast. Bryn, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my first podcast.
Woo-hoo.
I hope I did a good job with you guys.
I'm sure you will. So Bryn is the author of paranormal romance novels and also a reference guide, Master List for Writers. Her day job is in publishing, and she blogs about writing and creativity at bryndonovan.com.
Yeah.
So Bryn, tell us about the books you have out right now.
Let's see. Well, I have the last book that came out was The Phoenix Codex, which was my third romance.
Which I got to read.
It was my first self-published one. Before that, I had a couple of books with other publishers. And so that one is the first in the series. And the next one should come out early next year, I think. There was a little bit of a delay because I started a publishing company and I had to move to Los Angeles and things got really crazy.
Welcome to the West Coast.
Yeah. So the Phoenix Codex is a supernatural romance, and it's the first in a series about a secret society that goes back to medieval times that fights all kinds of supernatural evil. So
and it's awesome. I've read it. It's really good.
So thank you. Thanks.
So what exactly drew you to writing supernatural romance?
Oh, gosh. My first love as a reader was fantasy. As a kid, Lord of the Rings, my 4th grade slumber party, only 3 girls came because nobody really liked me. They didn't even those girls didn't even, I was really popular, so even those girls.
You're so lovable, I can't imagine, but okay.
I was like, just deeply unpopular. So like 3 girls came. I invited like 20, and the 3 of them came. And then my parents gave me Lord of the Rings. And then I spent the whole slumber party ignoring my 3 guests who showed up.
Oh no!
Reading Lord of the Rings. Wow, wonder why I don't have any friends. But as a kid, I loved that kind of thing. So Lord of the Rings, King Arthur stories, Knights of the Round Table, I loved. And so that was always what I was into. And I never read romance as a teenager or in my 20s either, because without reading it, I decided it was stupid.
Of course.
Which is so funny. But based on my experience of not reading it, I decided it was stupid. I guess that I thought probably it was about, pretty people. Like it was about becoming king and the homecoming queen, and then you're very beautiful. So are you. Great. It just seemed like so I didn't have any interest in it. And it took me a long time before I started wondering, this is a hugely popular genre. Why are so many people reading it? So I came to it really late, and then found out that I really liked it because some of my preconceived notions about the genre weren't true at all. That you had really well-rounded characters, and I love emotion. I love emotional scenes, and so that was really good for me. And so. Because I loved magic and these other worlds, and then I really loved the high emotional scenes, for me. So paranormal romance or supernatural romance was perfect because of that. So, yeah.
Put it right together. And actually, I have another question, but I'll mention that I had not read any romance novels. And when you wrote this one, you're like, Rebekah, you should take a look because I love fantasy.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I never thought of romance as being something that could also be like sci-fi or fantasy or genre story. And so that was definitely your book was definitely my entryway drug, because I was like, this is awesome because it has all the fantastical elements that I love,
Yeah,
the visuals and the excitement and all of that stuff. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So... Anyway,
you were such a good first reader. You read an earlier draft of it.
Yes, I did.
And you had such good feedback on it. It was so great.
I have the
I will
new
always be grateful. You're such a smart reader, and you have such good insights, and it was fantastic.
Oh, stop! Don't stop! No, I'm just kidding. But after that, I actually ended up trying my hand and doing a short story that was a romance.
Yay.
Yeah, because I just never thought, because I think I kind of lump it all together with also like rom-coms and stuff, and I do feel the same way about them that you were saying. You did like. Okay, you're pretty. No, I'm supposed to care, like what, So I also tend to find them very, like the movies at least, very like regressive with gender roles where I can't relate, and so I think I just kind of lumped it all together, and then
to me, the thing with the gender, that's a serious issue, and I like a lot of rom-coms, and I kind of. Work in my day job with rom-coms.
Yeah.
It's very important to me to, where is the humor? The humor should be coming from, kind of two people having two different points of view or worldviews about life or about the absurd situations they're in, and it's really lazy. Substandard humor to fall back on just like old gender stereotypes,
exactly.
And it's just a lack of talent.
For sure.
I think when that happens.
Well, and actually I think it leads me into my next question, which is your reviews will mention that your heroines are unconventional. And I don't know if unconventional means, it generally means, very either that has a lot of opinions or is very strong or, whatever. So is that purposeful? Do you sort of, how do you go about creating your heroines?
That's a great question. And my heroines are pretty different from me. All my characters have a little piece of me, heroes and heroines. But they're usually pretty different from me too. Like with Phoenix Codex, Cassie is more of a badass than I am. Like she rides horses. I've never even I rode a horse once in my life. She knows how to use a gun. And so she's more of a badass than I am. But it was important for me, to still have her be really real. And so when she's in some situations where I think a normal person with her background would cry or freak out, I go ahead and have her cry or freak out.
Right.
Because it's important for me for them to be, well-rounded and believable. And so I just really try to focus on that. And then people often have the wrong idea with romance that all the heroine wants, all she thinks about is the guy. All she wants is to find love, that's her goal. And that's, actually rarely the case in the genre. Okay, Twilight, I don't know, but you know what I mean, that's pretty much her thing. But for the most part, heroines usually have other goals and other motivations, just like regular life people. And so I think I just try to make sure that they feel well-rounded and feel like real people to me, Yeah. And it usually takes me getting through a whole first draft to really get a beat on my characters, which is annoying because I have to go back and rewrite, but it usually takes me that time sitting with them and to kind of figure out, I have a vague idea of who they are. And it's just like a friendship or a relationship where I get to know them as I spend more time with them. Yeah.
Well, one of the first things I noticed about Cassie was just she doesn't have much of a filter. And that's always kind of fun for protagonists.
Yeah. And I think I'm reasonably tactful.
Yeah.
I hope so. But I've had a couple of dear friends in particular who are not tactful, who they just blurt out anything that was in their on their mind, and sometimes it'd be really annoying, and then but it was also so endearing, and so yeah, I thought that was a big part of her personality. Yeah.
That's cool. You just mentioned that you had some friends that are just blurt out things and are endearing. So I'm assuming that sometimes you gather inspiration for your characters from the people around you. Where do you get your inspiration for the fantasy and the supernatural plots of your books?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first of all, I'll go back and say I get way too much inspiration from real life people for characters. So a book that's coming out with the publisher for my day job, and it's coming out this fall, I had a sensitivity reader for it because I had a Latina character, right? Okay, actually, that character was based a lot on my sensitivity, the woman I used for the sensitivity reader. So I was really happy that she didn't notice the one part in the manuscript where I actually accidentally used her name instead of the character's name.
Oh, no.
She didn't notice? How carefully did she read your book?
But anyway, I draw so much inspiration from people I know. But for the supernatural or the fantasy plots, I think that, because I have this history from a little kid of reading, Lord of the Rings and King Arthur and these fantasy stories, all kinds of fantasy fiction. They're just kind of like the fairy tales I tell myself when I go to sleep, like when you're almost falling asleep, but you're just your brain is sort of entertaining yourself. And so I think that it's just a lot of daydreaming, actually. Yeah.
Fair enough. Speaking of basing your characters on real people, so Bryn and I are both big Sam Winchester fans.
Yes.
And you were saying that actually your hero was inspired somewhat by our mutual fave, and you were like, I think you're gonna like him.
It's true, and I forgot that I said that. Because in the beginning I didn't know him as well as I knew by the time, as I say, I finished the book. But Sam Winchester was definitely an inspiration. And for the Phoenix Codes, for the Manu Sancti series, Supernatural was a huge influence. Which I don't mind saying at all, because you take inspiration from different things, but then you go and you make it your own, you know, and you just take little bits of things from different things, you know. But then once you've messed around with it, it becomes your story. So I feel like that's just fine.
Everybody does. True. I mean, everybody does. And, you know, that's how no one creates art in a vacuum, you know. And then actually the beautiful cover ended up having your hero's back on it. And Sam Winchester is quite famous also for his beautiful back. So I feel like that's another...
I never thought of that.
That's another connection there.
And with romance novels, I feel a little bit... I have some misgivings about male objectification on romance novels, covers in particular. You have like a lot of headless torsos with abs, and I worry about it being dehumanizing. And so, and at the same time, you want, if it's a book with explicit scenes, the way Phoenix Codex is, you want to convey that. You want people to know what they're in for. So it's tricky, which is what those.
Also, his back is it is actually very relevant to the story because of the scars.
Yeah, and so so I tried to do something that was more storytelling and about the fantasy, still a little sexy, and then hopefully not too objectifying.
So say a reader wants to try a romance novel, say they're kind of where you or I were kind of going, dismissing them, but then they want to try a romance novel. Where would they start? I know there's a lot of different kinds.
Yeah, it's a huge genre, and so I think, and kind of going back to your experience and you saying you like fantasy, you like, Supernatural, you're gonna like this. I think if you think about what you like, you can find that plus romance in the romance genre. So if you're like, I love Star Wars, this is my thing, go read some outer space romance. We have it. We got it. If you were really into Downton Abbey, go check out some smart historical romance. So just think about the thing that you're into, and you can find that in the romance genre, I would say. Okay. So, yeah. Because it's such a broad category. Really, the only two rules for romance is that people are going to fall in love and there's going to be a happy ending, and that's it. That's it.
Right.
Beyond that, anything goes.
Does it actually have to have the happy ending to be considered romance?
Great question. And to be in the romance genre proper, it does.
Yeah.
That's the defining characteristics. Now, you can have all kinds of books that have strong romantic elements that you wouldn't call the genre romance. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
People have to get their romance if they're buying romance. Yeah.
Yeah. And oh my God. So last year, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Berkeley. No, I can't remember which publisher it was. They put out a book marketed as romance, and it says something like untraditional ending, or unconventional happy ending. Well, both of the characters died.
Oh my God.
That's not like an unconventional happy ending. That's something different.
It's a tragedy. Yeah, that's a tragedy, right?
And people lost their minds. Everybody was, so writers were mad. Like everybody who works in romance was mad. Readers were mad because so the genre makes a promise to the reader that that's what they're going to get in the end. And I think that's fine, because life can be so hard. And so difficult, so that it's nice for readers to be able to turn to something and think, even if I go through hell to get there, at the end it's going to be okay, and some romance can be very rough in the middle. People die, people get tortured, and it can be very tough. But yeah, it makes that promise to the reader. Just like in cozy mystery, you're never going to pick one up, and at the end they're like, I don't know who did it.
Right.
It's a mystery.
Yes.
It's furious. So different genres just make a promise, to the reader. Yeah.
Okay. when I was younger, I read a lot more romance novels than I actually do now. My thing now is mostly historical fiction. Some historical romance, but not a whole lot. And I remember, you know, being in high school and like hiding my covers of my book in like other books so that my friends wouldn't see them and be like, oh, Leslie, your poor sexless life, this is this is what you do. And I'm like, oh God, I just like, please leave me alone. Anyway, is there still like a stigma against romance novels, and why do you think that stigma exists, and what role does sexism play in that?
Right. There definitely still is a stigma with romance and intellectual snobbery about romance. And sexism is a huge part of it. So the genre is mostly for, there are some male writers and some male readers, you know, like 15% male readers, something like that. But it's mostly for women, by women. And so there's a ton of sexism that makes people think, well, then it's frivolous, it's less important, it's lower quality. Even among women who would consider themselves feminists, that internalized sexism is still there, and still a reason why they'll put down the genre. And so the other stigma about it is because of a lot of romance having explicit sex scenes, and not just explicit sex scenes, but from a female point of view. That's the difference, right? Because, you know, on HBO and different other kinds of books, there's explicit scenes. It's really the fact that they're from a female point of view that makes people uncomfortable, because it's not the norm. It's not in anywhere else in entertainment, really. So it's completely different from all the movies you see, all the other books you see, all the television you see. You almost never see that sex scenes from a woman's point of view. And so that makes people extremely uncomfortable. And then some people are uncomfortable with sex scenes in general, which is fine. There are romance, and this is, again, is my day job. There's romance with no sex scenes at all, you know.
Those are my fave.
And that's called sweet romance, right?
Not comfortable with it. And there's so many different reasons for that. And I think it's good that there's a different level, no matter what you feel. I think it's good that it all exists. But because of people being uncomfortable with female sexuality, and then it just being such a female genre in general, I think that's why there is a stigma. Yeah.
I mean, you see it across pop culture with boy bands and pretty much anything that mostly women like. You're going to have a strong just outcry of just, that.
It must be stupid. Yeah.
It must be really stupid. And, you know, I think that is a big thing, you know, with romance novels, because just like Leslie was saying, like, oh, what if there's sex in it? It's because she's sad. And, you know, like, women's owning their own sexuality is so incredibly stigmatized that it's unbelievable. And that actually segues very well into my next question, which is because already I'm seeing the connections. So you mentioned that, of course, there is romance without any sexual content, and I believe that's referred to as sweet romance, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
But
my fave.
yes. And so you see,
clean and wholesome is their category for it.
So okay.
And yeah, some people don't like it being called clean because they're like, well, my romance isn't dirty, you know, which makes sense. Yeah.
So I see a lot of connection between fan fiction and romance. Fan fiction also obviously can be completely without sex scene, and people tend to think of it only as, you know, slash fiction, which or, you know, explicit, which it has the whole range. But you know, one thing that I talk about is there's so much fan fiction online. I do think it's really exploded, especially in, you know, I read mostly supernatural fan fiction, but I also dabbled in some others, Harry Potter world and stuff like that. And I do see a lot of the connection as far as it is mostly women writing for women, although not always about women. Sometimes they're male, you know, male gay relationships. But
And I see it, and personally, as something that's incredibly, not that it's always positive, obviously, but in general, I see the tool as something that's incredibly healthy and empowering, because a woman, and a lot of these are young girls writing it, and they're exploring their sexuality and what they like and what they don't like, and in a very safe and self-driven sort of way. But, fan fiction also gets a lot of that, oh my God, so embarrassing. Like, I can't believe these women think of sex. Can you believe them? And they write it, they just make it up. Well, yeah. But I also often wonder, is there overlap between fans of fan fiction and romance? And if there isn't, should there be, because if that's an entry point, because for me that was an entry point, Destiel really, and anything supernatural, or, kind of an entry point there. And then you start reading about all these relationships, especially LGBT relationships. Like, well, when do we go cross over and actually pay the authors, buy the books of the LGBT writers? And is there crossover? Should there be that kind of thing?
It's a great question. And I think that there are a lot of people who read both romance and a lot of fanfic, So I think that's definitely true. And then, although I'm not an expert on this, I think that fan fiction is one of the reasons for the explosion of romance, or romance between two guys, usually written by a woman, actually, which grew into this really robust category of fiction, right, in the past 10 years. I really think fan fiction had a lot to do with that.
For sure.
And I think women like to read a romance between two men. First of all, because a lot of times they'll find it sexy if it's a sexy story. But I think the other thing is that women like to, because men are so, unfortunately, socialized to not share their feelings and not articulate what they're feeling. In romance and in fan fiction, sometimes they can. And so I think that for women, it's nice too to see men in these vulnerable situations, and it really tugs on their heartstrings. And I think that women like that because of that.
Yeah, I think there is 100 layers on why women love male romance just as much. Sometimes it's a good story. Like Destiel is just a good epic story. And I also think it is something where, like you said, men are very socialized to be like, no homo, And when when two men are in love, and that love is strong enough to overcome all of that, it is it's touching, and it's vulnerable, and it's authentic, and it's not something you get to see often, to see sort of the interior lives of men who have to overcome all of that and just be vulnerable and be themselves. And so I think there's something that's beautiful about that as well.
Yeah. So it's just really emotional. And so, I do think that there's a lot of connections between fanfic and romance writing. And I think fan fiction is such a great place to start with fiction too, because the problem with writing fiction is you're trying to figure out everything at once. How to move the plot forward, how to describe things, how to come up with characters who make sense, And so at least with fan fiction, you have one thing you don't have to figure out because you already know those characters.
It was just fun. It's so fun to just play in someone else's sandbox.
Yeah, and so then you can work on those other elements about plot and description and dialogue, and you already have one thing figured out. So I think it's like a really good place to start out if you're working on writing. That being said, sometimes I'll read fan fiction that's very alternate AU, is that alternate universe? Yeah. Or things, they've taken things really far. It's like, okay, now Sam and Dean are in Renaissance France. And they're both courtiers, and and this, and then it'll go so far that I think, why are you even calling them Sam and Dean? It's fine that you got go ahead and, as one of my friends says, file off the serial number.
Yes,
you're story now, baby. You got it. It's yours. Now it's yours.
But a lot of people who write like that, they are authors, and they're published authors, or they're making money. They're even full-time authors, but they're having fun. But yeah, you're right. I love that saying, file off the serial numbers. You created something here. Yeah.
Yeah, like it gets to a certain point where it's like there's almost nothing left of the original. You can just go ahead.
Sell that, man. Sell it.
Just go ahead and make that your story. Yeah.
So this is a little off topic, but have you ever seen that gif of it's like one woman and then she's helping another woman up, and then that person pulls up the one that was helping her up? That's kind of what I think of when I think about your blog.
Aww.
About how you help other writers out. What's it been like? What has it been like creating that and building an audience for that?
Well, I have to take a moment. That's like about the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
I agree. I absolutely agree with Leslie. It's such a uplifting, inspiring blog.
You know, when I always really liked to teach. When I was getting my MFA in creative writing, I was a writing instructor, and that was like one of my favorite things in the world to do. But I feel like, well, with a lot of writers, I try really hard not to fall into this, because what do I know? I'm still new and learning too. People kind of want to act like a know-it-all, or they want to keep what they've learned to themselves. And I just don't think that makes any sense. And so when I started the blog, it wasn't that I thought I was an expert, because I still don't. But I thought, like, when I have something that works for me, I can share it. Maybe it'll work for you. Who knows? So I really focused, like from the beginning, I focused the blog on writing and encouragement and positivity, which gave the blog. I had tried some other blogs before, and they didn't work, and I got bored with them, and no one read them, and then with that focus about writing and encouragement and positivity, then I always felt like I knew what I wanted to do, I think the reason I wanted to do it was because writing is hard and frustrating, and there's so many difficult, painful things about it. Putting yourself out there for the first time. If you're a new writer, just having like someone read your writing for the first time, you feel like your skin is off. Like it's just so awful. It's so hard. And then as you get along and you've got something polished, but you're querying or you're sending it out, there's so much silence, there's so much rejection. Writing is tough every step of the way. And so I wanted to make sure that people stayed connected with the fun part of it and why they liked it, and could see, the good in themselves in their writing. So, yeah.
And you have the Work in Progress Wednesdays, one Wednesday a month, where people post what they're doing, and you read it, which is so nice.
It's so much fun to see I love it. It is so much fun to see what people are doing. And I'm really pleased that so far people have really held on to the intention of it. So my rules are always you can post an excerpt of your work. You can comment on other people's, but it's not a place to critique. It's so hard for people to come to the internet and not criticize.
Yeah.
Mostly that's why you came to the internet, It's so counter, but everybody has been great, because I've always thought to myself, if someone makes a mean comment on someone else's writing, or decides to do some in-depth pretentious critique when that's not what they asked for, I'm going to delete their comment.
Yeah.
It's going to be gone.
Right.
But it's never happened. Everybody just gets into that spirit of it, of just sharing, because that's really what it's for. It's not, for critique. And it's been so much fun. Yeah.
Well, it seems like you've attracted what you're putting out there, which is positivity. So that's great.
Nice. Yeah. I mostly, it's a really nice blog, so I mostly get nice people,
Yeah.
I will say it is slower to build an audience by being nice.
Yes.
If you want to I think it's really easy to get retweets, to get shares, etc. By tearing into things and criticizing things and being angry, and which is not to say that there aren't plenty of things to be angry about.
Right.
And so I'm saying that isn't a good thing to do. because sometimes it needs to, sometimes things need to be said. But I don't think that's where my particular talent is, so, yeah.
Well, did the resource, because you have a resource book for writers, at least one that I know of because I have it, and did that come out of your blog then? Because it almost seems like it came out of people really responding to it and you going, oh God, okay, people really want this.
Yeah, it did. So on the blog, so Master List for Writers, I had always made these little lists for myself, like I have a hard time thinking of facial expressions. If I'm writing, I can think of smiling and nodding, and that's it. Like, I don't know. So I make a list of facial expressions just for my own reference. So I'm like, just to have some different, so I don't keep saying the same thing all the time, and then I'll make a list of plot ideas because I'm like, oh, I can't write that right now, but maybe someday I will, So I started sharing those lists on my blog, and that really took off, to have all of those in one place. And so Master List for Writers is a bunch of lists that I use for writing that I thought people could too. And then the new one that's going to come out is Master List of Writing Prompts, which is going to be over 5,000 writing prompts. And it's going to be for blogging, for personal essays, for different genres, all kinds of different, so it's just a huge book of writing prompts that are there for anyone who wants to use them. So.
I can't wait for that because I'm always so surprised how much I get out of myself with the writing prompt. I'm always surprised. Yeah, it's always so useful.
I think they really help if people have been away from writing for a while, or if they haven't done it yet but they want to get started, I think those could really help.
Or you're
just
at a block like, oh, I'm not sure how to start this. It just gets your creative juices going, which is a lot of fun.
So,
I'll definitely be looking forward to getting that one.
Yay!
So what advice would you give an aspiring writer?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's such a cliche, but it's so true. I should read a lot, and sometimes I'll see on writing forums, people are writing their first fantasy novel or they're writing their first YA, but they've read 2 books. They've read George R.R. Martin and maybe another one. And so they'll have questions like, is it okay if I do this? Is it all right if I do that? If you read 10 books, you would know it was okay. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And I feel like, because I'm actually trying to write my first novel right now. I'm writing it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just, I started ordering and buying books and that because you also are going to avoid cliches if you see what other people are doing.
Absolutely. It's so funny because a lot of people will say, oh, I don't want to read anything else in the genre because I don't want to accidentally copy. Actually, you need to read in the genre to make sure that you're not doing the same thing everybody else is doing, or that you can put your own twist on it.
Right.
It's okay if you're doing the same thing. You got to put your own twist on it, And so, I think reading is so important to see how it's done. You read a bad book, you learn from it. You read a good book, you learn from it. And it gets that narrative voice in your head. It gets your creative juices flowing for sure.
Oh, yeah. So,
it's
definitely inspiring.
But it's hard for people, I think, to be, and I read so much as a kid, and now I really have to watch it because, I'm busy with work, but also with the internet, it can be very hard to shut it off and spend the focus and attention you need to read a book, So that's I would say that is my main advice. And then, the other thing, it's not for everybody, but I think it's worth at least figuring out the basics of a plot if you're going to write a long thing. And so what happened to me, and it's sort of sad, but it's fine, is for 10 years I tried to write novels and I couldn't. Because I'd get about 100 pages in, and then I wouldn't know what else to do, and it would just fall apart. And this whole time I was telling myself, oh, I'm not the kind of person who thoughts ahead. How did I know? I didn't even try it. Apparently, it's not like the other way was working great. I was a slow learner, and finally said, okay, I need to figure out a plot before I write the novel. And the first one that I plotted out just a little bit before I wrote was the first one I got a writing contract for.
Nice.
So I would definitely, if people have no trouble finishing novels without plotting them ahead of time, then fine. Then you don't need any help. But if you're someone who keeps on writing 2 chapters and then not knowing what else to do, and you have all these unfinished projects everywhere, then I would say just give it a try. Plot it out. Yeah. Plot it out once. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it again. Yeah.
Well, I've gone back to one series you wrote about how to edit a novel. I've gone back to that 5 times. I find that also really helpful. But right now with the book I'm writing, I'm absolutely at that part where I've written 20,000 words and I'm like, oh God, what's my plot? I thought I had one. So I'm definitely, I can relate to that.
Yeah. And it's funny because people think, well, I want to be surprised by my book. Well, I would love to get to the point where I'm not surprised, but that's never happened to me yet. So I figure out the plot and then I write 3 chapters and I'm like, oh, I guess things are a little different than I thought, and I go back and change it. But it still kind of helps a little, for you just know where you're going a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
But people, of course it surprises you because it's all coming out of your subconscious, and so you don't always know what's in there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So your tagline is writer, optimist, and geek. So you identify as a geek. So tell us a little bit more about what you geek out over.
Absolutely. So like I said, fantasy fiction has always been a huge thing for me. And actually, when Mr. Donovan and I met in grad school, where everybody else was talking about, literary fiction and poetry, he and I discovered that we both like the same really obscure fantasy, like pulpy paperback fantasy writer. And then I thought, this is serious.
Yes.
I was like, well, this is it. And so, definitely fantasy fiction. I just finished yesterday. I just finished Children of Blood and Bone with the Tomi Adeyemi.
That's on my order list. How was it?
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. It's funny. So I'm trying to make friends in LA. So I went to a book club with people I didn't know to go talk about it this morning. And they didn't all love it. And I'm trying to
You're like, good day, sir.
I'm trying to be I'm going to be friends. I'm not going to just tell them, oh, well, you're all wrong.
But they are. No.
But you're all wrong. But I just thought it was I thought it was so good. That's the first book in a trilogy. The next one doesn't come out till next year. So God help us. Oh my God. And, I can't wait. And let's see, Robin Hobb, the Fitz and the Fool series. Actually, so she wrote 3 trilogies. The last one I kind of got mad at. But still, those books are fantastic, and I love them. There was the Seeker trilogy by Arwen something Dayton, and that was young adult fantasy also that I thought was terrific. So I geek out a lot about fantasy fiction, and I love it. Obviously Supernatural. I am thrilled that it's going into season 14.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I started watching that in season 4, and I thought, well, I'm getting in on the tail end of it, but that's okay. I love it so much. And then Marvel Universe, they pretty much love everything. So things like that, I guess.
Awesome.
But anyway,
well, we talked a little bit about your website, and Rebekah gave a little bit of information at the beginning of the interview, but elaborate a little bit more for me. Where can people find you and your work?
Oh, thanks for asking. So the blog is just bryndonovan.com, BRYN Donovan.com. So the books are on Amazon, iBooks, BarnesandNoble.com, Kobo if you're Canadian and you like that kind of thing.
You're on Twitter too, right?
Yes, so I am, and I'm Bryn Donovan on Twitter. Let's see, and yeah, I guess that's about it. Yeah. So.
Just a side note, since you mentioned that Seeker trilogy, I'm on my library website right now borrowing it, so I'll let you know.
No, it's rough going, but but you know what? So is Children of Blood and Bone. That was like brutal. It's rough going, but it's so good. I hope you like it.
Well, they have book 1 and book 2 available. I'm looking. My library is weird. I don't like. They have Children of Blood and Bone available, but they only have it as an audiobook.
Oh, see, that's what I like.
That's actually how I experienced it, because I walk to work now in my new job, and so I listen to audiobooks in the morning. So that's the reader on Children of Blood and Bone is fantastic. So it's kind of worth it. Yeah.
So here's my I have it. It's a hold because there's like 100 people ahead of me, but I'm not a very good book listener. So like when I read, I have to have my eyes on the page. Like I can't be doing anything else while I read. You know what I mean? However, when I'm audiobooking it, like I could be doing other stuff, and by that point, I've missed half the book. So.
Oh, I can understand that. So we listened to part of the book when we were moving to Los Angeles from Kansas City. So I love books for road trips, but that's usually when there's not many, as you're saying, many distractions anyway. And then I can do it when I'm walking to work. And then that's about it. Yeah. So I know what you're saying. Yeah. So.
Well, it's on our list now.
They had all 3 on there. So I got them all. They're on my ebook reader now. So.
Excellent. Well, it's been so amazing talking to you. I love every time I get a chance to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to listen. And,
thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Since we are podcast newbies, it would mean a lot to us if you'd subscribe and rate us on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Also, we love to hear from our listeners. Leave us a voicemail at 785-746-2604. Email us at ask@geekygirlguide.com, or hit us up on social media at Geeky Girl Guide, all one word, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And remember, in the words of the great John Barrowman, never apologize for being nerdy. Until next time.